So we're really good at making excuses. Now, everyone in this room has made excuses, and you wonder why we make excuses. You stop and think about it. If you ever examine why it is that we make excuses, the reality is the reason we make excuses is because we don't want to do whatever it is that we're called to do. We don't want to be what we're called to be. We want to avoid something. Whether it's punishment, transformation, change, recognition of our faults, excuses are a way of us to get out of that. Recently I was talking to somebody and asking them why they didn't go to church. And there was all of a sudden this list of excuses. We hear about the priest abuse scandals, and so we don't want to be Catholic because that happens in the church. Therefore, it's a reason to leave the church. We hear about things that are like, I don't like this particular person, or I went to confession one time and the priest said something mean to me, and therefore I don't go to church anymore. I was dispirited, or we hear, I don't really get anything out of it. We hear all kinds of reasons why we don't go to church. And this person gave me all those reasons. But when they realized that they were talking to me and I wasn't going to settle for lightweight, namby-pamby, whatever reasons why I don't go to church, they started to get all intellectual on me. Right? So then suddenly they wanted to tell me these great philosophical, deep underlying reasons why you should not go to church. Specifically to the Catholic Church. And their big reason, which as it turns out is a validly big concern for everyone, is the problem of the existence of evil. This is heady. This is not simple. This is not in fact, we aren't going to be able to mow through this in an exhaustive way in today's time. It is a big issue. In fact, if we all know the great thinker St. Thomas Aquinas, church doctor and formulator and definer of so many Catholic doctrines, dogmas, teachings. Even he said, of all the things that are out there that would cause someone not to believe in God, this is one of the biggies. He came up with a couple, but this was one of the biggies. The problem of the existence of evil. And so this person who was telling me they didn't go to church because of the problem of the existence of evil, again, I didn't buy it because I don't know if they sat there and thought about that. Why would I go to church when there's evil in the world? But it is a valid concern and something we need to address because, quite simply, it's one of the biggest reasons that we have people not going to church. And when I say not going to church, I'm equating that with not believing in God. I'm going to go ahead and be so bold as to say if you don't go to church, it's really because you doubt the existence of God. That you don't feel called to do anything. A lot of people don't like to look at it that way and say that's oversimplifying, but I'm an oversimplified guy. And I want to see the real root, the real cause. And so when someone doesn't go to church, I think it's because they doubt that God exists. Because if God doesn't exist, they don't have to worry about this Jesus fella who is also God. They don't have to worry about this church that he started while he was here. They don't have to worry about rules and laws and things like that. Which means they don't have to conform themselves to a better way. They can be the way they want to be. But at the heart of all of this is this problem of the existence of evil. And for the people who maybe casually engage that argument or that discussion point, the more they think about it, the more it gets difficult to wrestle with. Stated simply, here's the problem. If God is all good, all knowing, all powerful, all love, why does evil exist? Why is there evil? Why would an all-good, all-powerful, all-loving God permit evil to exist? Why would He have created it in the first place? We'll talk about that in a second. Why does evil exist? And most people don't have an answer for that. In fact, most people, most guys, me included, at a certain time in my life, would have just said, well, this is above my pay grade. I'm not going to think too deep about this. Let me just move on and worry about where I'm going to eat lunch. Right? How am I going to make this car payment? And what do I have to do with my job? And we'll think of those kind of issues and we'll try to tackle those, but we're not going to tackle these great big arguments and discussions and debate points because it hurts sometimes to dig that deep and to think that hard. And sometimes we rely on other people to do all the digging and the thinking for us. We want things to be easy. But at some point in our lives, we stop and think about, why is there evil? Why do people suffer? Now, there are lots of reasons that we can start in this process, and we can go through. And St. Thomas Aquinas does that himself with all these objections and then all these answers and all these thoughts. And it would take hours to go through them all and parse them all out. So I'm going to simplify things in the way that I understand them. And I'm going to boil a lot of these arguments down into some basic concepts. The first thing I want to do is I want to distinguish between two different things. I want to distinguish between the idea of intrinsic evil as a thing, as an entity, and the idea of suffering, as in bad things. There are things that have evil origins. Their origin is in evil. A lot of times we equate that with Satan. Ooh, it's Satan. Satan's doing this. But even so, while the Bible tells us and our tradition tells us that Satan is a source of evil, he is not the evil, the only evil, the cause of evil. So we're going to talk about what evil is in itself, intrinsically. What does it mean to be evil? But then I also want to talk about this concept and understanding of suffering, of bad things. Because we can talk about evil and say evil exists and bad things happen, and we lump them together sometimes. And so some people start thinking, well, that's the same thing as like when a person murders somebody. It's the same thing as when somebody gets struck down by a hurricane or a tornado. When in fact those are different things, and how we look at those things needs to be looked at a little bit differently. But hopefully at the end of this discussion I'll show you how they actually are quite united. All right, so let's talk about evil. What is evil? St. Augustine helps us understand evil. There's a term called theodicy, which is really someone's explanation of why evil exists, or how God is reconciled, the existence of God with evil. Theodicy is a statement put forth that says this is why evil exists, or here's the way we look at or understand evil. And St. Augustine's, and again, big, long discussion and argument, but boiled down, in St. Augustine's view, evil is the absence of perfection. So evil then would be the shortness or the lack of God, the lack of good. It's the opposite of good. And this is an important concept, because we have to understand that evil is not an entity or a being, as if evil was created. Like on the 8th day of creation, and God created evil and saw that it was not good. That He created evil. Rightly put, God permits or allows evil. And we have to stop and think about that. Why would God allow evil? Again, same argument. God is all good, all knowing, all loving, all powerful. God can do anything with a swipe of His spiritual hand. He can eliminate all suffering. Why does God allow evil to exist even so? Why does God